Hello folks and welcome. So filming in 1080 if you need to adjust your YouTube player accordingly, usually with that little gear symbol. And if you're non-English speaking, maybe a translator. Now I am going to be making a Windows video today. I generally make nothing but Linux videos. I have over 500 of them. So English is my second language, so I do speak a little bit slower than others. For the fact that I do realize we have viewers all over planet Earth. This is my second channel and on YouTube, so I've been doing this for a long time. And more importantly, I also will repeat some things for emphasis. All right, so you can subscribe to my channel if you want to know more about Linux, and I'm going to show you what I have in mind today. This is Windows 11. I'm going to be filming entirely from that system today. But we're going to be doing something very unique. I don't have SAMBA installed, but I'm going to be transferring files back and forth on these three computers using one piece of software called WinSCP. It is available in your Microsoft Store for $10. I can also show you where you can download it for free off the actual developer's website. Windows 11 is what I'm going to be talking about today, and it's a rarity for me to do a Windows video because generally all I do is Linux. There's already 500 Linux videos there. So Linux is a free operating system for the most part, and it comes in many different distributions. I'm only just using two here. My subscribers, which I recommend would watch this video, also know what these mean, the Debian and the MXs, XFCE desktops. Though they're considered lightweight desktops. Linux is nowadays where you can do almost point-and-click installs. So if you're not aware of that as a Windows user. But today I'm going to do this video because of the fact that my subscribers also have Windows computers, maybe want to log into some of these things that are running SSH, Secure Shell, or using Secure File Transfer Protocol. And we're going to be using port 22 for that. That's generally default. Wireless interface is, and all of these computer names and names are all fictitious. So none of them are real names, but generally we're just going to talk about how these things communicate. We can also think about if we have a bunch of computers in the house and some of them are located in different rooms, and you want to find out if it's still communicating. Instead of maybe the kids unplugged it by accident. It does happen. You can do that electronically without getting out of your chair. We can also run commands directly in here to get system information and transfer stuff and even run services. All running on one piece of software called WinSCP. And again, you can pay for it, $10, or I can show you where you can download that. All of these guys are running firewalls, including the Windows computer. The Windows computer is a Bitdefender with a firewall. These two computers are GUFW or graphical UFW firewalls. They're extremely easy to configure. I have all those videos on my YouTube site for the Linux side of the thing. Today I'm going to give my subscribers a little treat and talk about commands using Windows 11, using their terminal box called PowerShell to communicate with also. And we're also going to do a graphical application to drag and drop files. So I'll be giving you all kinds of tips, including even resizing windows and stuff like that. Hopefully you'll enjoy this video. I would recommend subscription. And again, I do speak slower than others. I don't like to speed read. And more importantly, I try to describe everything that I talk about on my YouTube channel in detail. Whether you like that or not, you're in for a long ride. Probably 30 minutes. This is currently Windows 11. So I'm going to start with a demo. Generally, you would click this interface after you install it, and then use the login window, which will pop up here in a second. However, I'm going to show you a different method, using your own File Explorer to connect to the same, except it'll actually open up the interface in a second. Now, I'm going to pull down that box. That's one of my first tips if you're dealing with a window and you're using a standard computer mouse. I'm using a regular computer mouse even on this laptop with a scroll wheel. I cannot stand these touchpads. It drives me nuts. If I can use a mouse That's wireless, that's fine. And that's what I'm using today. So double click to go full screen. And then I'm going to use Control L to highlight the address bar and type in SFTP. If you don't know what that is Secure File Transfer Protocol. Then I'm going to put in a colon. There's two of those guys down there. There's the 2 dots and the 1 dot with a comma on it. Those keys are normally found somewhere close to your enter key, most of the time on the left side. You'll see it. Now, we use // in Linux, so Windows normally uses those. Just keep that in mind. So on my keyboard, the right shift key right next to it on the left has a question mark and that symbol. I'm pushing 2 of those. SFTP : 2/. I already created these users, so the first user is Bob. These are all made up names. All the network stuff is fictitious. None of this stuff exists on the internet. Wanted to tell you that right up front so you don't have to worry about trying to connect into these things. I do this quite frequently. I change names and all that kind of stuff on my channel. I have a little bit fun with names. SFTP : 2/, name of the user. Put the @ symbol there. If you don't know where it is, take a look at your F keys, your function keys on your keyboard, and below that are your numeric keys. Hit the shift and the number 2. You'll find that @ symbol. All right, so 192. I'm going to use the word dot. You can use the word period if you like. It's 192.168.1 is my local network. Made up network. A lot of your local networks also have a 0 on there and then dot whatever. Now this will be my router, but I don't need that. I need a 1 and another dot and then the name of that IP address of that machine. So let me just finish the statement, otherwise I'll have to retype it. But on that machine, it's 190. We can also talk about how we can troubleshoot these things using the PowerShell on Windows 11 to actually ping those machines to make sure they're alive instead of if they're in the next room and the kids unplugged it by accident. You get the idea. So I get a security certificate challenge right now, and this is coming off my local network. I do not have SAMBA installed, but I'm going to be doing file sharing with only one application today. Think about it for a second. 192.168, keep in mind there's a dot here, 192 dot or period 168.1.190. Port 22 is what we're going to be using for SFTP and also SSH. The software doesn't tell you that in this software store, but I'm telling you that it does this. So this is giving me a security certificate on my local network. Generally, I would just hit accept, but since I'm filming throughout this video, I will only use connect once through the whole video. You can also paste key, but I'm going to use this. So the next thing is you get a pop-up box. It says username Bob is requesting a password on that system. So I created that user Bob, and he has admin rights, and you'll see that when I actually run commands using PowerShell. But I'm going to first give the password out. Now, if you put it in properly, it won't say access denied, but it'll open up a second interface. And that interface is at WinSCP. I can double click that because I reduced it earlier. It's the same thing as clicking that. Double click. Okay, so this interface is called WinSCP. Again, you can find it in your Microsoft Store for $10. You can also download it for free. And you can see the developer's name is right there. And that becomes important to understand about this file later. So the interface, when you install it, has two options, a single pane and a dual pane. I would suggest you pick the 2 when you install it. You can also do some custom stuff in there, but if you just keep the defaults, this is what you get. I'm filming in 1080. I'm filming in 1080. I'm going to say it twice as a reminder in case you say these look too small to you. I don't recommend mobile screens like those 4-inch iPhones or those 4-inch Android phones. These videos are way too small. I'm filming directly inside of Windows 11. Okay. This is a Linux computer on that IP address. This is Windows 11. Our user for today on Windows 11 is T-Man. This is Bob. We already logged in here. This is T-Man's download folder. That's the file that I'm going to show you how to install later. So I'm going to open up Bob's documents, and we're going to do file transfers. We can do it one at a time, or I can do it in groups. I'm going to drag my mouse across. If I don't want all of them, I'm still holding the mouse button down. I'm going to drop down to maybe that, and then let go of the mouse button and drag the whole set over. So I literally transferred files from that Bob's machine or server over to this Microsoft Windows 11, to the download folder of this user called T-Man. I can actually go the other way, believe it or not. So I will go up to the documents folder for this user. And unfortunately it has nothing but pictures, looks like. So I forgot about, these are all demo machines. So I just forgot what I had on here. And where do we want to put it? Well, we can put it in the download folder. I don't have a lot of stuff in Bob's download folder, so let me grab this group in here and just drag that across. Or I can do a single one. It doesn't matter. You can also hold down the control key and multi-select while holding down the control key while clicking. You can see them highlighted. I'm just going to grab a group of these. I don't really care. These are all demo files. But I want you to be aware of this. SAMBA is not installed, and I'm literally dragging files from one machine to another. I'm going from the local Windows 11 machine into Bob's download folder. Maybe you can see some value in this video. Maybe you can't. I can do the same with folders. I can also create folders here. So what we call those are directories in Linux, and it's called directories also here. So I'm going to call that one Bob's Junk. And I'm just going to leave the subsets alone, but create the folder nonetheless, because I have the authority to create a folder here. I'll grab some more images. We'll just grab a couple of these JPEGs and drag them over. And you can see some of them are huge. Now this is initiating the transfer, and you can see that one was actually 17 megabytes. Fairly quick, isn't it? You can also see the user rights on this. Bob is the owner. Linux machine, Windows machine, Linux machine, Windows machine. So this is WinSCP. I initiated the conversation by using your file explorer. After installing this, if I do it this way, you'll open up your box, depending on if it goes in full screen or not, and you got a login screen. Now I'm going to show you the different way of doing it. So SFTP is Secure File Protocol. It generally uses port 22. So on both of these machines, going to the map, they both have firewalls turned on. And port 22 is open. So that means I can connect through port 22, but the system is going to block me by asking me for passwords for users. Okay, so we're going to SFTP into one of these machines. I'm going to use an IP address. So 192 is my local network, 168.1, and what's the last ending? Let's do Bob's, it's 190. Port 22, and what's the username? Well, Bob in this case. All these are made up names. If you are going to be hosting any server services, I always recommend decent passwords, and I think you probably know what I mean by that. Login, security certificate. Again, I told you I wasn't going to accept it. I'm going to do this connect once. So in this video, continually see that box so you understand some of these things. I'm logged into Bob. The same way I was doing that other in a couple of minutes ago, I can open these folders and do drag and drops. All right, now you understand a little bit about that interface. It's quite fast, and I do not have SAMBA installed. But I do have the authority to transfer files on my local network to these computers on this drawing. Linux is a free operating system. They come in many desktops for Linux, by the way, unlike Windows 11 is one desktop. So XFCE is considered a desktop. We also have Cinnamon, KDE Plasma, and all these kind of stuff. Why did I choose XFCE? Because they're lightweight computers and they can be used on old computers. On my YouTube site, if you subscribe, you can read my About section and my mission statement. Okay? In there are links. One of them is to, quote, DistroWatch. It has hundreds of different Linux distributions. They can be, they're ranked by certain numbers. I don't really use that. But generally, Debian is considered a stable Linux distribution. It's called an LTS for a reason, long-term support. So they don't use the latest Linux kernels, but they use stable kernels. Windows uses a kernel too. You'll see that this MX machine has a much higher number kernel than this one, because I'm going to verify that kind of stuff electronically through using SSH in a minute. But Linux operating systems nowadays are getting to be point-and-click installs. All right, not as deep as people think it is nowadays. Now, one of the things that is if you're a power user for Windows, you probably know this has terminal installed. Let's try that again, TER. Terminal is not only found on Linux, but it's also found on Microsoft Windows and Mac computers. You can put that on your, I call this the panel bar in Linux, but your taskbar by pinning it. You can see it says unpin because it's sitting here right next to my recording software, which is OBS in this case. All right, so let me give you some tips on the Windows PowerShell. I generally do nothing but tips for nothing but Linux. But there's a lot of tips that are real similar in here. One of them is double-clicking to make that full screen. Double-click. It's the same thing as me clicking that. Okay, so I'm going to go full screen. And let's just say that this is Windows PowerShell. Okay, so I'm just double-clicking to get some different views. So Windows PowerShell is very similar to regular Linux terminal boxes. But for your users that are nothing but Linux, and I predominantly use mostly Linux, however, I'm certified in Microsoft also. So C:, the name of the drive is very common for most Linux users to Windows users to understand, but they use backslashes. We use // in Linux. And I'll show you that in a second. So the user today is T-Man. It's just a made-up name. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is this command here. It's called clear. But before I do that, that's probably too small for you, isn't it? So as I pointed out to you earlier, on this wonderful yellow mouse pointer that I'm using, I'm holding down my control key while scrolling up with my mouse to make that bigger for you. If you did not know how to do that, you can do that in Windows PowerShell. Hold down the control key and scroll up, providing you didn't disable a lot of functions on your standard install for Windows. Now I'm going to punch up clear. And that's a standard command that works both on the most of your Linux terminal boxes also. All right, now I'm going to type in ping. We're going to do some diagnostics first. Do you have a bunch of computers in your house, on your local network maybe? Picture 6 computers, maybe 3 of them are in a different room than you're currently at. And you have kids in the house. And one of those kids decided to unplug your computer to go charge their toy. Yeah, that makes me angry when that happens. But anyways, how do we find out if it's online without getting up out of our chair? Well, we can use the ping statement for that. Ping can be also used for internet. So let me give you an example of internet. BA.com. Do we know what that is? I believe it's either British Airways or Bank of America. One of the two. There's the IP address. Now, in Linux, it usually continually goes, so I use Control-C to stop it. But I have an IP address, 23.197.237.117. That does exist on the internet. Not on my local network, though. How is this tool finding this? It's running through a DNS server, domain name system. If you want to think about it in a simple way, the yellow pages of the internet. We as humans use the ba.com. The computers use those numbers to talk to each other. Your web browser does this in the background. Anyone who uses a web browser either on a mobile device, that would be tablets and smartphones, or even computers, they use DNS. You normally get it from your ISP, Internet Service Provider. But there are also free DNS services out there. To give you an example, show you how outdated I am, so to speak, there were 5 DNS servers in the world when I started. Yeah, that was a long time ago. There are hundreds now. And all they do is translate those things to addresses. So I'll give you another one. I'm going to use the upper arrow key on my keyboard to give you another tip of repeating commands. So I will use Amazon.com. A lot of people shop there to buy goodies. I do. It's where I buy a lot of my hard drives and stuff. And for my channel, Linux for Seniors, I have 4 computers that I constantly replace operating systems. And I have pull-out hard drives. So Amazon.com is going to answer back with a number, and that changes periodically because I use rotating servers. So sometimes you get a different number, but generally I'm connected to a server at Amazon.com. Yeah, their web services uses quite a few Linux servers, and so does Google, for instance. Now, let's do this in a different way. Now that you see that I pinged 2 different addresses, those again are coming from the internet. Let's talk about local network. The kids unplugged one of your machines. Well, let's find one of these on my chart. Let's pick on this one that ends with a 172. PING, we'll do IP address first, 192.168.1. As I pointed out, most of your local networks are this way, or they'll have a 0 there. Okay? So mine is 1.1 is the router. And that generally works. Or a 0.1. But I will use the upper arrow key to repeat that statement to not have to type all that. And then I use my backspace and I'm going to put the IP address of that machine that we have for Bob. And that's answering back. So now I know it's plugged in and running. It doesn't tell me if it's running server services or the firewall is configured, but I know it's plugged in and the kids didn't unplug the cord. All right, I'm just making a joke because some of this stuff is dry humor. However, I can also punch up clear and ping that by name. So if I know the name of the computer, so I'm going to type it in manually. And that one for Bob is Debian124, I think. So if it is not in my host file and it fails, then you can put .local on the tail end and it should find it in most cases. You can see it's answering back with an IP address, 192.168.1.190. I'm leaving out the periods, but you need to put those in there if you're doing it manually. So we can do that to the other machine too. The other machine is, I think it's MX 23.5, I think. We'll do .local on the tail end also. That way I don't have to do this twice maybe. And that's an IP6 version address, so let me ping it by just the name and see what we end up with. If it comes back, it says host not found. That is not in your hosts file, like this one. We can also ping it by IP address, which I suggest you do most of the time, just to verify communications. So 198 wouldn't cut it. That's not my local network. 192 is. So if I wanted to, I can punch up clear and then hit my arrow keys to cycle through those commands and find that one. And erase that tail end number and put in a 72. What machine is that? That's the MX machine. So that would be PING MX, what is it, 23.5 and .local. Local. L-O-C-A-L. Come on. I knew I could do that. Sometimes when you type and talk, you can see it's the same IP address. So a lot of the fancy-dancy network called enterprise networks also have name resolution servers. All they do is translate IP addresses to names. We don't have that on our local networks most of the time. So we do it the poor man's way. On some Linux systems, I actually put entries in the host file, hosts with an S. And sometimes we can type in local on the end, and on some system it doesn't function properly. IP addresses is your best friend to do that if you're just checking to see if the things are plugged in. It doesn't tell us if it's running any server software or the firewalls are configured. All it tells me I can connect to it, either wirelessly or Ethernet. Punching up clear. I'm done with diagnostics. Let's talk about logging in. SSH stands for Secure Shell. And we're going to log into this using a secure connection. And we're going to be offered a security certificate. And if we already have it, then you can next time just log in with the username and password. So we're going to do Bob first, and we're going to use the IP address because that's very standard for what system administrators do. And you can do the same on your local network. I do not have any SAMBA services running. As an FYI, one more time repeating myself. All right, so Bob is not found on that system. It's Mark, but I'm going to let you see what happens when I do that. So it thinks that Bob is there, so I'm going to put in a password. And you're going to see a rejection. All right, denied. What's the password for Bob? Well, Bob doesn't exist on that particular IP address. So I can use Control-C to get out of it, just like I can on Linux. Then I can use the upper arrow key to fix this by scrolling over, going next to the B and use my back arrow key, and then type in Mark in this case, because he is the user for 172, and hit enter. Again, you're not going to see me type in anything. If your keyboards are defective, may I suggest opening up a text file and or a Windows Word file and just start typing all your keys on your keyboard. If it skips over, you know you got a bad keyboard. Doesn't matter if it's a tower computer or a laptop. It does happen, folks. It does happen. Now, I'm going to hold down the Control key and scroll up to really big and let you see that Mark is now on MX235, the computer. I'm going to punch up clear and give you a couple of commands. INXI is a command that I like to run with that option, -big-F-XC, to strip out personal information. And it's essentially a little script that runs on most systems if you have INXI installed to give you data on the system. This one is running for almost 14 hours, 32 gigs of RAM represented in GIB. Some of your folks that are Linux users know what the INIT means. Process 1 is not systemd, in other words. The shell on that machine is bash, born again shell. And let's take a look at maybe some common information that most people can understand. So this is running a MX23.5 advanced hardware support. It is brand new as of 2 days ago for your fans of MX, XFCE. It uses a Debian package base. Debian is generally considered a long-term support edition, and that is called Bookworm. It's just a pet names they give it. And that's using a 6.12 series kernel, very advanced kernel. The other system, when you see me logging into that one, will have a 6.1 series kernel. Okay. The reason I chose the Advanced Hardware Support Edition because they have a standard one. That one runs the 6.1 also, but I like the driver that came with this for wireless. I'm using Wi-Fi 6. You'll see that in here in a second. So the motherboard model number is right here. It's the central processing unit, or CPU, is an AMD Ryzen 7 8-core. And the graphics card is an AMD Radeon RX 580. It's not too bad. And you can see that I'm running an Intel Wi-Fi 6 on that machine. This is not the local computer. This is not Windows 11. This is the Linux machine. The drives on that system, they have 3 of them. One of them is an NVMe. It's a Western Digital 1 terabyte. That's the model number. Then the other one is a PNY CS900 240 gigabyte SSD. If you break it down in GIB format, that's the number there. You can do the math online if you like. TimeSec is another vendor name, and that's the size of the drive. Okay, this will be the fastest one. If you know what an NVMe, they're almost like a big fat USB stick that sit on the bottom of the motherboard in most places, in most cases, and they're very fast. A lot faster than standard solid-state drives. All right, 13 hours and 57 minutes is how long this guy's been up, 32 gigs of RAM, just for a quick info. And the INIT for your Linux folks, that's what it's using instead of System D, Born Again Shell. Let's do some other commands just to let you see that I can do them. Now the df command usually by itself does not break this thing down, but I can quickly look at the root partition to see how much space it's currently in use on that server. Quickly. If I use the upper arrow key on my Microsoft Windows PowerShell terminal box, I can push the upper arrow key and do another df and put an H in there because the last statement was df. Is that a little bit easier for you to read in gigabytes? It's still 9%. And here's the raw information right here. I can do lots of things. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to type in the word exit, but I'm not going to clear the screen this time. You can probably tell that connection is closed. I'm back to Windows, the C drive. These are all backslashes. These are forward slashes. That's what Linux uses, is / something. I'm going to SSH into the other machine that says Bob on it at 192.168. Could I use the name? If I use the .local on the tail end, yes. But generally most system administrators would be using IP addresses, and that's very common. You can also use that on your local networks. So Bob is sitting on that machine that ends with a 190. So I'm going to log into there and put in Bob's password. If I didn't have the security certificate, it would challenge me for that. Now I'm on Bob. This was Mark. Now this is Bob on Debian 124. Believe it or not, I used Windows 11 PowerShell to install this application on the Debian system because it is not installed by default. Some system install that command by default, but Debian does not. I actually used Windows 11 to do this with, but I'll use the same command nonetheless. That one has been up for 13 hours and 48 minutes, 16 gigs of RAM. That one does run System D and also Born Again Shell. 6.1 series kernel, just keep in mind Debian systems are considered LTS, long-term support. So a lot of Arch-based Linux distributions live on the edge, and sometimes those systems break because when you live on the edge of some software, some things happen and things crash. Debian is known for being a stable system. Now, that's one of the things you need to think about if you are trying to install a Linux distribution. Debian and Ubuntu-based systems are, a lot of them are LTS, long-term support. In either case, it's a desktop. MicroStar is the motherboard, and here's the model number. That one is using an AMD Ryzen 5 5600 with a graphic chip. These are getting fairly inexpensive. 6-core. I do have a secondary graphics card, which is a little bit beefier, I think, than the chip is, and that's the model number of that NVIDIA card. How many drives does this have? 2. One of them is an NVMe again, 1 terabyte. The other one is a standard SSD, 240 we'll call it because of the GIB part. So this one here, I can also log in as root and run a command to see if the server SSH is running. These are a little bit more extensive commands, but for your Linux viewers of mine that are watching this channel, I'm going to basically talk about logging in using also root. Scary commands. We're going to log back in as Bob because I closed the connection. But I'm going to first clear the screen in Windows 11 using the PowerShell. Windows PowerShell. One more time. Upper arrow key to repeat that and log back into Bob again. Again, you don't see anything I'm typing. That's standard. I'm back to Bob again. Clear all that stuff out of the way. You folks that run Debian systems know what I'm talking about. You need to be in SU mode to basically get into root. Okay, I'm just going to verify service. I'm not showing you how to install anything. So since this runs systemd, that would be systemctl status SSH. What is that going to do for me? It's going to confirm if the thing is running an SSH server. It is. It's active and running. You can see it from here. Secure shell server is running. So you can see I can run commands from even Windows confirming this. Control C to exit. And I'm in root mode, so if I hit exit once, it goes back to the standard Bob user. And I'll type in exit one more time to exit the interface. And it closes the connection. And then another exit, I can close the actual PowerShell window. All right, so let's go through here one more time as the example. And we can connect using SFTP host name. We'll use IP address. Again, 192.1. 192.168.1 is my local network. And we'll use 190 as where Bob is hanging out. Bob is the user on that system that I have admin rights to. And of course, password. All in one shot. Log in. As I pointed out earlier, I'm not going to do the accept. And now you can see that I'm logged in as Bob on this Linux server. And Linux desktop running server software. And this one here is just standard user. We can transfer files either way. So let's go to T-Man's the Windows 11 user downloads for a second. And let's grab something he doesn't have. One of these images. We can at the same time go, well, does he have all these files? Generally, let's see if he does. If I drag one across, it will complain if it's not there. Overwrite the remote file, yes or no? All right, so what if we switch directories? And I'm not sure what he has in his pictures. There's some screenshots in here. There's one I could use, just a regular file. All I'm doing is transferring or copying that file to here, that screenshot. It's a small, well, it's not that small, but anyways, it's a little over 4 megabytes. But I just went both ways. Now, to give you the layout of the LAN one more time, this computer is not hosting any server services, Windows 11. But yet you saw me drag files this way, and back from here to here without using SAMBA. SAMBA is used for file sharing on a lot of Linux computers and Windows computers. I'm only using WinSCP, which I can use Secure Shell to transfer files using SFTP and SSH commands. These two are running server and client. This one is running none of that. This is running WinSCP. Firewalls are on. So again, Debian over here, MX over here, they're both free operating systems. You can find an old computer to install these on. XFCE desktops, I think you can install those all the way up to, I think, 15 years old computers. So if you got a doorstop in your closet, that's Windows ME, for instance, repurpose that computer instead of ending up throwing it in the landfill. And you can install, well, server software on them. Use it for file sharing. Let's talk about the software itself. So I gave you lots of tips and details, but more importantly, now let's talk about what to install. So in here, I was just waiting for the Microsoft Store to acknowledge that I'm here. So WinSCP is what I would suggest using for a search field if you want to purchase this software. You can find it here. It is $10 minus a penny, so it's $9.99 currently. Today's date is January 15th, 2025. And that's the developer there, Martin whatever. And you'll see that on the file that I'm going to download directly from their website and not pay the $10. Oh, Microsoft doesn't like that part. But in either case, I'm going to go directly to the developer and download the software because, as you can see, it says it's free. So I'm pointing at this thing for a reason. So WinSCP is a popular free secure file transfer protocol and FTP client. You can also see the word Amazon S3. Those are web services. FTP, FTPS, SCP, SFTP is what we've been using. WebDev, and others. You don't see SSH in there, but you've seen me use it, and all I have is this software installed. Now let's talk about the website itself. Now I'm going to use Firefox with all the commercials turned on, so I'm not doing it to annoy you. I'm just showing you what it does if you don't have the filters to block out commercials, and it's getting ridiculous nowadays. Use any search engine you want, but what you're looking for is WinSCP in your search bar and go find it. Okay, so I will use Google for this process. The official site, don't go downloading this from some other crazy website. You never know what you get. I generally advise all my users on my Linux channel, and I have again 500 videos if you haven't subscribed, to download stuff from their software stores. They're called repositories. Sometimes you need to go to the internet, but always download them from reputable website. This is WinSCP.net. This software has been around for a while. So you will get all the commercials with it. It says nothing about SSH in here, but you'll see that it does say SFTP. So I'm going to click the download thing, and you're going to see commercials pop up. Don't continue. It's an advertisement. You know, we get fooled with these things constantly. There's the actual official download. And if you don't want to download this from WinSCP.net for free, then go pay the $10 on the Microsoft Store. All right, I'm going to get rid of that nasty note, and I'm waiting for my download box to trigger. My network is fairly fast. You can see it downloaded very quickly. We're going to open up our File Explorer, and we're going to talk about the install now. So I have two of these. I downloaded both files. One is the original, and one is just the new duplicate that I just did less than a minute ago. I want you to see that name that says company on it. That was the same name in the Microsoft Store. So I can say I'm fairly confident that that file came from the original developer. You double click on these things and you're going to be offered this interface here. During the installation process, it's going to ask you, let me close the login box. You're going to be asked if you want a dual pane or a single pane interface. Personally, I would choose the dual. You're going to be asked a couple of basic questions, but generally if you just accept the defaults, you're going to be installed and ready to go. As I pointed out, on my network, I set up Linux servers, which is free software for both of these. All I needed was the hardware. I generally replace the operating systems on these two units constantly. And this laptop is a dual boot laptop. It also has Linux on it also, but I'm running in Windows mode. Operating systems for Linux is generally free. If you look and subscribe and look in my About section, in other words, my mission statement, you can read about me there and why I do videos, and more importantly, there are links in there. One of them is called DistroWatch. They have hundreds of free Linux distributions in lots of different flavors. XFCE Desktop is just one of them. You'll have Cinnamon, Plasma, just to name a couple. There's also Arch-based distributions, but generally you want something maybe stable. Like Debian is usually considered a very stable system because they don't use the latest and the greatest everything. And you sometimes don't need that. These will run, Debian and also MX will run on very old computers for the most part. I do recommend 4 gigs of RAM if you want to do any kind of work, because a lot of these things that run 2 gigs of RAM nowadays are not very good if you log into these things graphically. I'm saying a lot of things, but at the same time, you can probably see the value if you do this on your home network. You can share files. You can also use the Linux systems by themselves. Even though they got server running, most of them have client also. This does not have any of that stuff. Windows 11 does not come with server software. You're using WinSCP to log into these servers, to download these files or upload these files, because I have the authority to do that. I may have said too much, but I think I gave you a good idea and a good taste what you can do with your local network without using SAMBA for file sharing. Thank you for watching.